Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Quinney, and this is the Flames Faceoff, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. This is a weekly show where we bring together some of our best writers in the Calgary writing pool to discuss all things Flames. Now, to make sure you don't miss an episode, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. Just hit that little red button on the bottom right of your screen. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook. You can like this video on YouTube and Facebook and share it with your friends. And be sure to check out some of the great hockey content that we have here on thehockeywriters.com. So with that, let's get going. Let's introduce our panel. We have with us Colton Pankiw. Colton, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Paul. I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm pretty good. And next we have Brett Krauss. Brett, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Always glad to be back on our Sunday afternoons here.
Yeah, what would you rather do?
Exactly.
Yeah. And we got Greg Tysowski. Greg, welcome as always. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm doing great too. Looking forward to actually golfing soon. So I hope the show doesn't cramp my style on Sundays.
Golfing.
Yeah.
And not even close in this part of the country. But
well, I just got an email saying that one of the courses in Calgary is opening up April 2nd or 3rd. So it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah. Well, speaking of golf, you may encounter some of the Flames out there on the golf course. I don't know. Don't want to sell them short, but they had an absolutely dreadful week. They dropped 2 to the lowly Ottawa Senators and another one to Winnipeg on Friday night. Some are saying, that they can't possibly make the playoffs. I think they'd have to play at 750. Looking at some of the social media, it looks like a good portion of the Calgary fan base is going through the 7 stages of dealing with death when it comes to the Calgary Flames playoff prospects. Where they go through disbelief and shock, and then there's denial. I think before last night, they were at the anger stage, but with that win, maybe they're at the bargaining stage. I don't know. So what are your thoughts, gentlemen? Are there playoff hopes? Is it finished? Colton, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think going like last week, we were pretty much all in agreement that those 2 games against Ottawa were pretty well must wins given where they are in the standings right now. I don't know what it is against the Sens this year. It's just for some reason they just can't get points against them like the rest of the teams in that division are doing. So I mean, is it possible they could still get in? Yes, but I don't really see it happening. Just like you said, the pace they'd have to play at with how they've done so far this season, I don't see it happening.
Brett, what are you saying? Hope against hope, they can make it. There's still hope, or not so much?
All confidence is lost for me. I think they're finished. I just haven't seen enough from them this year to go, 15-5 in the final 20 games to maybe even sniff that 4th place spot. So I think I will say that they're finished for this season.
Okay, Greg.
Well,
any hope?
Let's make it unanimous here. Like in the 7 stages of grief, I think the final one is acceptance. And I've accepted it. In fact, in my article this week, I wrote after the Ottawa series, I said, their playoff hopes were dashed. And I kind of felt a bit like one of those news networks that calls an election like way too early, like way ahead of the other guys. And I was like, well, why are they calling it so early? Well, that's just, I have confidence that they're not going to win 3 out of 4 games down the stretch here. And the only thing I can kind of think of, I was kind of wrapping my head around this before we went on air today, was what could possibly kind of turn the tide. And the only thing I can come up with is the fact that Montreal has kind of lost all these games due to COVID protocols, that they say they're going to try and play every one of those games. So their schedule just became really more, compressed than anyone else in the division. And maybe fatigue sets in and, there'd be more back-to-backs. And I'm not sure how they're going to reschedule this, but the only thing I can think of is that Montreal kind of craters at some point in the remaining 25 games that they have left. and that helps the Flames squeak in. So that's the only thing I can. But now I'm grasping at straws just to trying to throw a bone to the people out there who believe it can happen. But I'm on record now already with my story this week that it's over. So I got to stick with that and tell them that I think they're toast.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, we all could be wiping egg off our face in a couple of weeks.
I hope so.
Yeah,
sure. I hope so.
But
I would love to keep writing about the Flames, past the regular season. It's a lot more fun to write about playoffs than it is about prospects and trades and picks and whatever their off season can bring. So if they go for a run here, I'd love to see it. And it's not unheard of. Like teams sometimes go crazy down the stretch and then they're on fire in the playoffs, and it can happen. But with this group, how consistent they've been and frustrating to watch, I would be bowled over if they were to win 3 or 4, every week to make the playoffs. So.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the stats. I think they got to win 15 of the next 20 games, I think it is, and I don't think. Well, they barely won 15 of the first 35 games.
Yeah.
To your point. Montreal is going to have a compressed season. It was already compressed. And I don't know what has it been, a week-long layoff? I don't know what that's going to do to the rhythm. But what do you think is going on have the players lost faith in the Sutter system? I mean, if you look at it, Sutter he's won 5 and lost 5, started out really well. But it didn't look like earlier in the week that it looked like there were problems with buy-in to the Sutter system. Colton, what are your thoughts on that? Has he failed to sell the team on the system, or?
I think it's too early to say on that. Like he said, he's only been behind the bench for like 10 games now. I think it's just the problem's a lot deeper than just the head coach. I think it's kind of become more evident than anything. Obviously everyone knows about the whole coaching carousel they've been through for quite some time now, and it's kind of been the same thing in this season. I think it's just really been like the proving point of that. Obviously there's just been so much that's gone wrong. So yeah, I don't think it's fair to say that it's Sutter's problem or that he's getting tuned out or anything like that. I think there's just problems that go a lot deeper with this team.
Yeah. Brett, what's your take? Have they lost faith, or did they ever really totally buy into the Sutter style?
I think there's been a couple games where it's looked good, and I thought last night they played fairly well, and even Johnny Gaudreau was playing quite a bit with the puck and looking a little bit more like himself. But I think Colton's right. It's too early to tell. I think you got to finish out this season and kind of look at it again in the off season. But I think, you could more so be looking at this off season that it's the players. This isn't the team that's going to get you the playoff run that they've been hoping for. I think it might have been evident in their series against Colorado there 2 years ago. But I think it's time to really start evaluating who are going to be those players that can, win you a Stanley Cup down the road.
Yeah. Greg, what are your thoughts? Cap this off for us. Have they just failed to buy into the Sutter style, or?
Well, I think one of the big things about this Sutter hockey or Sutter style hockey that people keep talking about is like tightening up defensively and, kind of creating offense through kind of a aggressive forecheck and playing hard, stuff like that. And they have tightened up defensively. Like they had one bad blowout loss. But other than that, even in the games they've lost, they haven't been able to score goals. Like they've been only giving up a couple of goals and in a lot of these games so that they've played, over the last 10 games. So I think they have tightened up. They have bought in somewhat. I'm thinking, they should get some credit for that. Like they're not so loosey-goosey, I don't think, as they were before Sutter. So I would say that the experiment has been, a partial success in that regard, and that, their goals haven't given up as many goals as they were before the coaching change. So there's something working there, but I think it's obviously going to take a lot longer than a half a season for this to see if it'll it'll work. And that's why they hired Sutter for 3 seasons, this season plus 2 more. So they're hoping he'll be a long-term fix, even though, I think they were really hoping he would be a short-term fix as well for this season. But I don't know. I think we'll have to just kind of see how it all plays out. And these last 20 games might just be auditioning for Sutter to see who he likes and see who he thinks will fit in going forward. And so, it could be interesting to watch how the players are shuffled around. Even last night, I was surprised to see Stone back in after a year, of not playing for the Flames. All of a sudden, Stone's back on defense, and they
look good.
And they benched Dubé, and Dubé's kind of been in the doghouse on and off. Even with Jeff Ward had reduced his, had benched him, and so I think Sutter's going to do a lot of that in the last 20 games, unless the Flames start winning a lot of games and getting close to that playoff spot again. I think he'll be experimenting a lot down the stretch here to see who fits in with this Sutter style hockey.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reason I was asking you guys what you thought of buy into the system, I mean, I'm continuing to be astonished in the post-game press conferences. You've got leaders on the team sitting there and saying, well, I know I can be better. Look, now's the time you need to be better. Tanev the other night after the Winnipeg loss Friday night saying, we got to play with a sense of urgency. Well, if you don't have a sense of urgency now, when are you ever going to get a sense of urgency? So I would have thought Sutter would have addressed all of that. But,
sorry to interrupt, but speaking of post-game pressers, have you guys been enjoying Sutter lately? I think it's been great. He's just, he's calling him these dopey players. They got to wake up. And then it's asking him a softball question about Gaudreau's 500th game, which almost any other coach would be talking about what he's done over his career. And he just says, well, I hope he's better than the 499th game. I was like, that is great. I think Torts is the only guy who is more entertaining with his, gruff style than Sutter. And I'm just sorry for the sidebar, but I've been enjoying Sutter's press conferences a lot. So,
I mean, what do you think, Colton? Are you enjoying those press conferences as much as Greg?
Yeah, I think it's pretty funny. I think it was the same thing when he was with the Kings. He seemed to always just have some that would just blow up, whether it's just kind of being grumpy or whatever. Yeah, he's always got some good press clippings. So yeah, it's been entertaining.
Yeah, I don't know, Brett, your take on it. Ever thought of writing an article on Sutterisms?
I think many people have done that before. Before my time here at the Hockey Writers, I'm sure, but I think it's kind of just a different change of pace from those normal cut, copy, paste answers that we always get, but for some reason continue watching the press conferences. But I don't know, it might work because, they even asked Gaudreau about it, and he said how he's been playing hockey for 25 years and he knows when he's played a bad game. So I think, I think they understand where he's coming from too, that he's holding these guys accountable, I think.
And Gaudreau played a better game after being called out as well. So maybe this kind of style works.
Well, if you're not winning games, then you might as well be entertaining at the press conferences, and he's certainly been that. But on that point, any concerns there? Because Gaudreau, he did say, I forget his exact words when he was asked about Sutter's comments. He did say, "I didn't think much of them." So, and then the reference to, he didn't call anybody a dope, but he said a few of the players were dopey. But I just wonder how long that's gonna work. It's early days yet. I suppose it will. I mean, he embarrassed Gaudreau and he came out and responded. But thoughts on that, Greg? Is it?
Well, I think that's why they hired Sutter, is just to make guys accountable. I think there's a danger of some players becoming too comfortable with their head coach, and a head coach has to be approachable. You have to be able to talk to him, I think, and you have to be able to have a relationship. But I think they hired Sutter because I think there's this level that the players have to be maybe intimidated by him and kind of scared into playing better. And if that's what it takes for this group, then some players really do respond to that. They actually I remember seeing some of the panel on Hockey Night in Canada, and talking to Kevin Bieksa was talking about Torts, and he felt that way about Torts, but he said I played some of my best hockey under him because I didn't want to suffer his wrath. So I know this kind of style has its pros and cons, and I think that's one of the pros is that it can work with some guys.
What do you think, Colton? How long can it work? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's why lots of those coaches I find tend to have pretty short shelf lives. I think that's why, is like Greg said, it does work. It's a different approach, and it does work. But I think players can tune that out eventually. I think, like, if you look at Torts, he's been around the league quite a bit, and I think you see or you hear guys that used to play under him saying that after a while you just kind of get sick of it. That's why, and I think you'd wrote an article about it, Paul, about how you weren't sure how Sutter would work with the Flames, and I think it's just kind of the old school coach. I questions the hiring too, just with these players and their mentalities today. It's different than it was say 10, 20 years ago, whatever. So I do kind of question how players will take to him, and I was pretty confused, I guess, or surprised when I had seen the hiring. So I'm interested to see kind of how that plays out over the next season or two, however long he's there.
Yeah. Well, you guys, I'm old enough to remember the days when players had to have part-time jobs in the summer, and they were completely beholden to the team, the organization, and the coach. And so I guess they had to put up with a bunch of crap. But, when you're playing, Johnny Gaudreau makes $6.75 million a year, and any team in the league would be glad to have him. So there's, how much does he take of public embarrassment? I'm not saying we're at that point yet, but I don't know. Brett, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with Colton too. I think a lot of guys, you could easily tune out after a while, because it just probably gets frustrating or annoying to those players, and they may just want to change of scenery after that. I think in today's day and age, it'll be a fine line that Sutter will have to be on a lot or watch more carefully, because I think the way it works today, if players aren't happy, then they'll just kind of work on trades to move players out and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it'll work. It works for some people. It's like some people take that accountability, and they all talked about it in the first week he was hired, how he seems like that in the media, but then behind closed doors he's asking how your parents are, how the wife and kids are, kind of thing. So I think it kind of goes both ways. He's seems, what the people say is he's interested about your life, but he'll definitely hold you accountable for your play on the ice. So yeah. I think if you find a healthy balance, it can work really well.
Yep, fair enough. That's what he's paid to do. So now that we're all agreed that the Flames probably aren't going to make the playoffs, then where do they go from here? Are we looking at a rebuild, for example? Many people are, or suggesting they just blow the team up. But is that really in the cards? Greg, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's easier said than done. I've been kind of following a lot of Twitter, a lot of the Flames blog sites, and a lot of the pundits and NHL and Flames reporters. And like sometimes they put up these polls. It's like, what should the Flames do? Should they blow it up? Should they, be sellers at the deadline? Yada, yada, yada. And the overwhelming response, from the fans, now this is kind of not a scientific sample, but it is, what you see online and on Twitter, is that fans want to see big changes. They want to see things, big trades. They want to see big signings. They want to see, the core dismantled. And it is easier said than done. I don't know what's going to happen at the trade deadline. I know that this now with the 7-day quarantine as opposed to 14, that's going to make a difference to see what they might do. And as for like dismantling the team, I personally, I've been following them since 1997. I started being a Flames fan, and I'm kind of, I think they're one of the organizations that kind of takes the longest time to make up their minds what they're going to do, whether they're going to just try and keep tinkering or rebuild. And the Flames just, they never seem to, make the call fast enough. And I think this is a time when they should make the call and just, let's say, I think we have to go in a new direction, and they should see what they can get in the off season for some of these big pieces that are out there. And, I'm all for it. And I would love to see a new direction, because what's been happening in the last 5 years has not been working. You know, they've had some pretty decent teams on paper and some pretty good results in regular season, but they can't seem to get over the hump and they can't seem to make any progress in the playoffs. So like, I think they should start doing it. But like I said, easier said than done. And we'll see if Brad Treliving can make some wheeling and dealing, because it's his job on the line. If he can't make this team work, then after 5 coaches and all these years, like, he has to try something either to save his job and save his team.
Okay, Colton, we fired Treliving. You're promoted to the general manager's office. What are you going to do? You're going to blow up that core? Or
yeah, like Greg said, I think changes are definitely needed. The only thing I'd be careful about is, like, I'm not a huge fan of complete rebuilds. Just, they don't always work out. I mean, if you look at Buffalo right now, they've been rebuilding since they drafted Jack Eichel in 2015. The Oilers were in the same spot for a long time in the Hall Eberle kind of era. So you have to be careful there. I think more of a retooling, like moving some of those core pieces, but really not just getting picks back. I don't know if blowing it up is the really best option, just because, like Buffalo or like those teams, it just doesn't always work out. So I think you really have to be careful and make sure what you're getting back is gonna pan out for the future, maybe not just picks and then hoping that those players turn out.
Yeah, Brett, what are your thoughts? What pieces of the core would you move, if any?
Yeah, I think they have to do something. Like, kind of think back to those few years where Brad Treliving seemed to kind of be one of the better GMs in the league. You know, he traded just draft picks and brought in Dougie Hamilton, and then he flipped Dougie Hamilton and brought in Elias Lindholm and Noah Hannafin. And I think he's got to do something like that. I think there has to be a major change in that sense. I'm definitely with Colton. I don't think total rebuild is the way to go, because you got to have a long-term game plan ready to go. And you basically have to, you know, there's a lot of complications there too, because if you're going to a full rebuild with a bunch of dark years, how much revenue are you losing in season ticket holders or even just general attendance, let alone season ticket holders?
Yeah.
So I think they have to make some sort of big change. And like, just thinking that, you know, they were in on Mark Stone that year for so long, right down to the deadline, until Vegas got him. And the rumor I think that I had heard was because they didn't want to do it because Valimaki was part of it. And while he still can turn into something, but at the time, you know, if you have Mark Stone on this roster, maybe they're in the, you know, race with Edmonton and Toronto. Like, a guy like that could really turn your roster around. And so I don't know. I think they got to make a change, but somewhere in between complete rebuild and retooling, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't look like that's a rebuild is the direction they're going in, does it? I mean, they've got they signed Markstrom to a 6-year deal. They picked up Tanev, Sutter. Treliving's made it clear, hey, he's here for 3 years, and Sutter's not the type that's going to stick around for a rebuild. So I think you guys are probably right. It's some major changes, but not a total rebuild.
They can't do what they did last year, like pick up a handful of like league minimum forwards and just sign and hope that's going to, you know, round out their roster. Like, that, you know, I know that they had the big signings and Markstrom and Tanev, but other than that, like, those little pieces that Treliving put in there were, like, none of them really panned out. And like, they've all been league minimum, you know, salaries. And it's like, I don't think the fans would approve of that kind of tinkering. I think you're right. It has to be maybe not a full blow up. It has to be more than just, you know, a few little signings to try and, you know, boost the forward ranks. They need something, some kind of a splash. And so I guess we'll see what happens.
And when do you think they'll do that? What are your thoughts, Colton? Are we going to see anything before the trade deadline, or is this going to happen in the summer?
No, I think big changes like that, even in a non-COVID year, generally happen more in the off season, whether it's at the draft or just here in the summer. So I do think there will be at least one big change, maybe a few, but I think that'll happen more in the summer.
Yeah. Brett, would you agree with that, or are we going to be surprised at trade deadline?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think yeah, it's just too difficult right now. You know, they're already, like, the Elliot Friedmans of the world are already talking. This could be the quietest trade deadline we've seen in a while.
Yeah.
Just because of quarantines and cap space, and teams are tight for money. So, you know, the off season, you have a little more breathing room. So I think, and even it could even come after the expansion draft. They may have to wait, because that could be a lot of balls in the air for a lot of teams there. So it could. I think at the draft probably we'll see something though.
Yeah. Well, Greg, you mentioned picking up players for the league minimum salary isn't going to cut it next year. Would you dump some of those players that they've got on the roster before the trade deadline? I don't know. Could you pick up some draft picks?
Well, the only person that might have value out of all those that they picked up, like names been bandied around a bit, has been Josh Levo, because he's kind of has a reputation of being a pretty solid, bottom six style forward, and so you might be able to get something for him at the trade deadline. But like Nordstrom has been kind of invisible, and like guys like Dominic Simone, who they picked up, hasn't even been in the roster for probably 20 games. So I think they might be able to get something for Levo at the trade deadline, and if they wanted to just kind of start dismantling some of this team early, But other than that, I've been seeing some crazy stuff being written about. If the Flames are committed to like a big rebuild, like they should, get rid of some of the players that are, they'd be able to sell high. And like they say that Chris Tanev's having like an outstanding season, and his value would be like off the charts for someone looking for a solid defenseman for their playoff run. But I think the Flames want to keep him because he's probably one of their best players. And so, but if they were serious about rebuilding, they should, sell high on someone like him, because like someone like Mark Giordano, he's in decline. He's not. They wouldn't get much for him at this point. So, yeah, it's I don't think there'll be much going on either. But I would maybe see some minor moves at the trade deadline. Just move some salaries around and move some lesser roster players out. Who knows? That could very well happen.
Yeah, well, we're going to see. So switching gears here, let's take a look ahead at the next week. It's not going to be an easy week for them. They've got to finish off tomorrow night the Winnipeg set, and the Jets are going to be a little ticked off, I think, after last night. That's not going to be an easy tilt. And then it's, I believe it's the Canucks, and then Edmonton, and then the Leafs. So what has to happen next week? Well, they got to win, right? But their backs are against the wall. Colton, what are your thoughts? Make a big bold prediction? How many of those games are they going to win?
Oh man, so tough. I think after the Sens last week, I really have no idea. It's going to be tough, obviously, like you said. Winnipeg again tomorrow, who I would be surprised if Hellebuck's not back in, so that makes things difficult there. And then, yeah, the Oilers obviously haven't been easy for them this year, and even the Canucks, as of late, have really started to pick things up after a terrible start. It looked like they were pretty much out of the hunt, and now they've really crept back in. So I don't know if you can get maybe two. I really don't know. Like, they could win all of them. They could lose all of them. They're so inconsistent that it's really hard to predict.
Yeah. Brett, what do you think? Where are we going to be this time next week?
Oh, yeah. It really is a tough question because, Hellebuck's back in tomorrow night. And I thought they played well last night, but I really do think that Brossoit kind of handed them that game last night. They did make it fairly easy for David Riddick to get the win. They didn't allow a ton of shots, but yeah, I mean, maybe they can get past Vancouver, but Thatcher Demko's been standing on his head for 2 or 3 weeks now. And if the Flames are still struggling scoring, it's not going to be a pretty week. I'll say that.
Greg, what should we be looking for? What's going to be the most entertaining game?
I'm actually looking for them to lose all 4, because then we can kind of put to rest, this kind of whole theory that they can still make it. Like, if they kind of run out of runway, if they lose all 4, then all of a sudden they have to win then they're down to like, they can lose only one game the rest of the season to make it to 65 points. And they basically run out of room, run out of runway. So it's funny because like watching these recent games, I was kind of invested, like a couple weeks ago, I was getting really angry and I wanted to throw my bottle of beer at the television a few times. But then last night I was watching the game and was like, you know what? It doesn't matter if they win or not. And all of a sudden they win. It's like as if it had become, if we're not invested anymore, all of a sudden they'll start winning. So that might be kind of a reverse jinx that I'm putting on the team that I'm going to stop thinking they can win, and now they will win. But I think if they go on a kind of extended losing streak or kind of a slide here, and then we can kind of see what's in this organization. Maybe we'll see Matthew Phillips for the last 10 games or something. And they can move some guys up and down the roster and just see what we have. And heading into next year, because I really don't think they're making the playoffs. So at this point, seeing if they're going to win 2 out of 4, 1 out of 4, I say lose 4, all 4 of them, and we'll start from scratch here.
Well, you make me laugh at that image you throw on your bottle of beer at your television set. I was on Twitter deck Friday night watching a Winnipeg game, and guy comes in and says, "Oh man, I don't think I got enough rye to finish this game." So,
yeah,
but, there's a lot of fans.
That's how we all feel sometimes.
A lot of fans hurting out there. But to your point, I suppose in the games remaining, if they are out, 20 games, Sutter can take a look at what he's got, think about some of the changes he's got to make, and they can start that process early of rebuilding. Brett, I wanted to touch on that though. It does give him a chance to experiment with a taxi squad, and you wrote a good article on Connor Zary, Flames prospect. He debuted in the AHL. Say a little bit more about him. Why do you like him? And do you think we could see him on the taxi squad in the next 20 games?
You probably won't see him on the taxi squad because I think Kamloops, they just got started this weekend.
Okay.
They've got 24 games to play, so they'll and I think they have a good team, so they'll probably be looking to make a deep playoff run. I don't think we'll see him back in pro hockey this season, but I didn't really know much about him when they drafted him there back in October, but watching the Stockton games, he fit right in. They put him right on the first line with Matthew Phillips and Adam Ruzicka, and played really well. Even when he ended up being out on the ice without those guys, he made some really good plays and had made some great assists in some of the games, and you could just really see that he fit in, into pro hockey, and he probably should have stayed, but because of the CHL and NHL's agreements, he was ineligible. And then he's back in Kamloops, and I think he had 3 points in his first 2 games, so he'll be off to the races there. But so far really impressed with what I saw. So I think we'll see him in the AHL next year, I believe, and then we'll see. He could even get a look in the NHL next season, but to be seen.
Yeah, no, I noticed him with the World Juniors. He looked good with Team Canada. Colton, you wrote an article about Tkachuk's ice time under Sutter, and I don't know, I guess I was scratching my head wondering why was his ice time reduced? I mean, and even Sutter said, well, yeah, my bad. I made a mistake. What do you think was going through his head?
Yeah, I don't know. It was interesting. It was like I got it maybe for the first game or two, just trying to see exactly what he has. But like the fact that they need these wins so desperately right now, it's interesting. And then he had that press conference where he said, "My bad," and it changed a bit. The loss against Winnipeg, I was looking today, he played over 18 minutes, but then he was back, I think, in the 16 something last night, which is more than he was getting. Still not a ton, so it's interesting. But like through those first 8 games, I think he was averaging less than 15 minutes a game, playing less than like guys like Lucic, which if you're clawing back into a playoff race, I just don't think can happen. You need your best guys out there. And so I don't know if there was a message being sent and just stayed behind closed doors or what, but yeah, it was very interesting.
Yeah. And Greg, your article, you came out earlier in the week and just said, I think it was after they lost to Ottawa, that was it. Their playoff hopes, the Flames playoff hopes were dashed. And I was wondering, well, everybody's wondering, what is the problem with the Flames in Ottawa? Do you have an explanation for that? I mean, if I look at the season, they've met them 7 times and they've lost 5 games, and that's 10 points, and would mean there's, if they'd taken those points, they'd be solidly in a playoff position. What accounts for it?
I wish I knew. And the thing was, after those 2 losses against Ottawa, in those pressers, it kind of sounded even like Darryl Sutter was kind of saying, "Oh, we actually played okay. We actually, we didn't play all that bad. We're just beating, Ottawa. Hats off to Ottawa." But it's like, I don't really understand that logic either. Like, you have to get those points, like everyone else. Is I know they've beaten some other teams. They have a couple wins against Toronto, but it's one of the biggest mysteries of the season is how the Flames let these games, get away. And they've just, even if they win half of them, they're in a better spot. But to really just crap the bed like this against Ottawa is kind of beyond belief. And it just kind of just shows how this team is so frustrating to watch and how they're inconsistent. And it's kind of their performance against Ottawa just is kind of is their season in a nutshell. They just can't seem to get their act together. So, I wish I had an answer for you, a better answer. I just don't know. And it'll be one of the big mysteries when they deconstruct this season as to why they couldn't beat Ottawa. So,
sounds like a good topic for an article, Greg. I can see it coming down the pipe. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. As always, it was a great discussion. And thanks for everyone for joining us for this week's edition of the Flames Faceoff. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, to make sure that you don't miss an edition, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter and Facebook, like this video and share it with your friends. And be sure to check out tomorrow, the Flames Weekly, where we recap all of the action the Flames have had in the previous week and look forward to the upcoming week. And do be sure to check out some of the great content, hockey content that we have here at thehockeywriters.com. Until next week, take care.